This masterclass is all around the 5 steps to avoid a cash flow crunch. Now, I've worked with hundreds of tradies over the course of the last 9, 10 plus years, and each and every one of them at some point in time has a cash flow crunch in their business. Now, for many tradies, that comes in January, February, and often into March, when you've had some time off over Christmas and New Year, you've been super busy leading up to Christmas, and invoices haven't quite been sent or they haven't been paid, and that causes an issue early on in the year. Now, for some tradies, it doesn't happen at that point in the year, but it happens at other points in the year. So whatever time of the year that you have your cash flow crunch, it might be once a year, it might be once every month, it might be once a quarter, it might be here and there. These 5 steps are going to be able to help you avoid that to happen. Or if you can't avoid it, because you may not be able to fix everything right at the very first instance, but you will be able to dramatically reduce it so that next time it's going to be even better and better and better and better until it doesn't happen anymore. Now, these are, I have created a checklist, which you will also get as well. So you can print that out, scribble all over it, tick, cross, whatever you need to do. I find it much easier when there's a simple checklist to follow. Now, what I wanted to start out with is if we look at this diagram, so today is where we are in the blue. And if we look over onto the right-hand side, that is, say 12 months down the track. So if we follow the green line, if we make a decision today and we implement, we're going to be in a much better situation than we were if we don't do anything. So I want you to have a think about what that ideal situation for you feels like. So if you are somebody who has that cash flow crunch come early in the year, what would it feel like to you to not have to worry about trying to find money to pay bills and trying to find money to pay wages and trying to find money to pay yourself? What would that feel like if you just had if you had money in the bank account to be able to cover those things? And then what you think about is 12 months time, if you follow the orange line. So the orange line is never usually straight. It's normally up and down. So you'll have some weeks or months where there's lots of cash in the bank, and then other weeks or months where it's really, really tight. So this is constant, oh, I'm doing okay, I'm not doing okay, I've got enough money, oh, I don't have enough money. And you're back and forth, up and down between ideal and crisis. And I want you to have a feel and think about what that feels like to you. Now, for the businesses that I've worked with, it's very, very tiring. It just exhausts them. It's stressful. It's stressful on their family, their friends, those around them, their workers, and it's not really a fun situation to be in. Now, I want you to think about if you did nothing after this session and you just continued on what you were doing. When it comes to that crisis point again in January, February, what does that feel like to you? Now, for those that I've worked with, January, February, March is a time where I received lots of emails and messages saying, I don't know how I did this again. I'm not sure if I can make it. The business can't support what I need to. I get lots of emails and messages from people who are almost at rock bottom. They're super stressed. They're super annoyed at themselves for it getting to this point again. And they're not really fun emails for the client to send, obviously, or the new client to send. For me, they are quite stressful on one hand, because I hate to think that people are in that situation, but also very, very hopeful, because I know there are things we can do quite quickly to help turn these new clients around from this crisis situation to an ideal situation. Now, what I would love is that you don't get to that crisis situation, that you can actually make a decision after today's masterclass and implement some of these changes, if not all of these changes. And then you will be on a much, much better, nicer, more relaxed path than if you do nothing. Now, if you've taken the time to watch this masterclass, and it will be brief, it'll be 20, 30 minutes max, You'll have your checklist to work on afterwards. If you put in even an hour's worth of time around these 5 steps, you're going to see a significant improvement in your business. If you watch this and then do nothing, nothing's going to change. If you watch this and do a couple of steps, then you're going to have those ups and downs again. So I really, really encourage you to just set aside some time and get these steps implemented. As I said, they're super simple. There's nothing new here that you won't already know. I've just condensed it down into a really simple 5 steps. Let's get into them and show you what they are. So what I want to start with is your bookkeeping must be up to date. Now, often when I say this, first and foremost, with every presentation that I do, every masterclass that I run, there's usually a collective sigh of, oh, mine's not quite right. Oh, it's almost right. Oh, we're working on it. We're going to get to that. We've just been so busy. And I understand all of that. But what I also want you to understand is that your bookkeeping being up to date is the financial foundation of your entire business. No matter what you do in your business, everything relies on your bookkeeping being up to date. Now, if you do it yourself, or if you have a bookkeeper, or if you have an admin person who does it for you, I don't mind who does it, but it needs to be up to date at least on a weekly basis. Now, as an example, I have a bookkeeping business as well called Efficient Tradie Bookkeeping, and we work with those tradies who have got to the point where they're like, you know what? It's not for us. We can't keep up to date with it. We are spending too much time on it. And then we step in. And the very first thing we do is do a full review of your Xero file and make sure that we find all the steps that you're missing to make it efficient and effective. We then give you suggestions as to what else you can change to make sure that this process is really streamlined and simple. And as I said, efficient, because that's our sole purpose at Efficient Tradie Bookkeeping. We work with our clients on a weekly basis doing their bookkeeping to make sure that they're only ever a week behind. Now, for some of our clients, we go into their Xero file every day. For our larger clients, sometimes it's only once a week. It just depends on what works best for your business and what processes we're going to set up in place. But I can't stress enough that everything in your business, whether it is cash flow, whether it is marketing, whether it is sales, whether it is team and your staff, everything relies on your bookkeeping being up to date and you being able to access the numbers of your business. Now, for most people, knowing the numbers around their business is quite overwhelming and consuming, which is why we work with them through our Profit First program to teach and educate you in what you actually need to know and when you need to know it. Not here is all the information, make sure you do these things, but this is what you need to know at what point in time in your business. And again, we make that all efficient and effective because we don't want to waste anyone's time, nor ours as well. So if your bookkeeping isn't up to date, please reach out. We'll book in a 15-minute chat. I'll give you at least 3 areas of your bookkeeping that you can go away and improve, or we can organise a chat to have a look at what might be a best solution to work with us at Efficient Tradie Bookkeeping. If you don't want to change your bookkeepers, that is perfectly okay. We are happy to do a Xero review for you and happy to give you a report on what your bookkeeper or your admin person can do to improve your bookkeeping. So the first step that I wanted to go through was stop telling yourself that winning a big job, the next job, that job for XYZ company is going to solve your cash flow problems. In 99% of the times, it will not. We need to focus on what we're doing now and how do we fix what we've got, what work we've got now, so we don't, we need to patch those holes in the bucket. We can't just go pouring more and more water into the bucket if those holes are still there. So in step 1, what I want you to do is, as I said, stop thinking about the next job is going to solve this problem. It won't. What I want you to start doing is to go through the jobs that you have and those that are coming up, and see how you can make them more profitable. Now, that may be things as simple as timing when you do the jobs, making sure that you're not traveling too long between job A and job B. For example, you might want to schedule job C in there because from A to C is a shorter distance, or whatever it may be. But go through and just have a quick look and make sure that you've actually quoted enough for the job. Now, in some instances, you'll find you haven't, and you can't change that in most cases because you've already provided a quote, unless you have a criteria in there which gives you the option to make adjustments. Then absolutely take that option up. But if you haven't, we then want to make sure that you're not losing too much money on that job, which comes down to making sure that if you quoted $5,000 for materials and you realize there's been a price rise and it's going to cost you $6,000 and you don't have a clause in your contract to be able to allow for that, then you have to make sure that you can try and recoup some money back somewhere else. So it may be making sure that the team are more efficient when they're on the job. It may be that you are going to lose that $1,000, but don't lose anything more than that $1,000. And then in that example, I would then make sure that in your contracts or your quotes that you have a clause in there that says you can allow for changes in material prices, which I hope most people do have that. And because the material prices are so up and, or more like up and up and up at the moment, that's something you need to make sure that you have in place. You can't keep taking those changes on board. So step 2, don't waste money in overtime to get the jobs out the door quicker. That might get the job out the door quicker, but it's not going to guarantee you're going to get paid any quicker unless you follow step 5, which we will get to in a moment. What it will do is just eat into your profits. What I would like you to do instead is review your expenses and the people hours that you have on those jobs, and make sure that you track them to see if you are going to go over. Now, you might have quoted a job and you might have a little bit of leeway in there, which means you can afford to, 3 guys at 2 hours overtime and you still might be able to cover your costs. Perfectly okay, but just make sure you do that quick calculation to make sure that you're not eating into your profits. Now, step 3. Outlast the desire to take money from your home loan, your credit card, your overdraft, wherever it may be, to fix the problem, to just get through this phase, because it doesn't solve the problem, it just makes it worse. The amount of clients that I've worked with who have come to me when they have maxed their credit card, maxed their home loans, maxed their overdraft, and they've got no more money to throw into the business is quite high. And it's by that stage, they're really, really stressed and really, really at their wits' end because they don't know what else to do. What we need to do before you start throwing money into the business is making sure that that money isn't leaking out where it shouldn't be. And again, we want to start reviewing your expenses and making sure that there's not, it might be an insurance policy that you've had on a car, that the car was actually sold and you haven't cancelled the policy. I had a client who was paying, I think it was around $50, $60 a month for a car insurance, a ute insurance for, I think it was like 4.5 years. And it wasn't until he was working with me from a Profit First perspective, and we deep dived and did a full zero review, and I made him go through 3 months worth of statements to see what was actually coming out. Did he realize that he was actually paying this extra money? Now, fortunately for him, the insurance company gave him back 2 years worth of premiums, but he still had 2+ years that he'd been paying for something that wasn't necessary. $50, $60 over the course of 12 months, over the course of 2+ years. I prefer that money to be in your pocket. So it's those little things that we want to catch, that we aren't just wasting money on. Now, step 4, we want to make sure that you've invoiced all your clients who should have been invoiced. Now, again, this is not rocket science, but the amount of clients that I work with who have cash flow issues, and when the first thing I look at is the jobs completed and the invoicing. And if there's a gap between the job being finished and the invoice either not being sent or not being sent for, a week or 2, sometimes a month or 2 later, is quite high. You need to make sure you finish the job And that client is invoiced within 24 hours at a bare minimum. And depending on the type of business that you have, that will all depend. But as a bare minimum, it needs to be within 24 hours. For some clients, I say you finish the job, you invoice the client, you get payment on the job, depending on what type of job it is. But as a bare minimum, they need to be invoiced within 24 hours of that job finishing. And what I also want you to do is contact all your clients who have outstanding invoices to date and just confirm they've received their invoice. So I always say you need to be polite and persistent. Now, what I find a lot of the time as well, clients will say, oh, I never received your invoice. How can they pay you if they don't have the invoice? Now, sometimes that is because you haven't sent it. Sometimes that is because the email address was slightly wrong and they didn't receive it, or it's gone to their spam folder, or whatever it may be. If you send that invoice at least maximum 24 hours after a job has completed, send them an email or a text or a phone call, whatever your form of communication is, the very next day, saying, hey, just contacting you to confirm you received the invoice we sent yesterday. Can you please let me know? And that's all it needs to be. It doesn't have to be when is it going to be paid, blah, blah, blah. We're just making sure that they have actually received the invoice. Which brings us to step 5. Anybody who owes you money, they need to be followed up. Now, again, depending on your business, but as a general rule, what I say, if the bill's due, if the invoice for them is due today and it's not in your bank by tomorrow, you contact them tomorrow. Don't leave it a couple of days. Don't give it a week or so. Don't think, oh, they usually pay me within however long. Follow it up. Now, this doesn't have to be you that does this. It could be your bookkeeper. It could be your admin person. In many, many instances for our bookkeeping clients, we do all the follow-up and we do this whole process for them. So they actually don't need to worry about any of this. But we make sure that we follow up. But firstly, we have to make sure that your bookkeeping's up to date. We have to make sure that all your payments have been reconciled, because there's nothing worse than following up Steve for an outstanding invoice and then Steve tells you that actually it was paid 3 days ago or a week ago or worse, a month ago, and your bookkeeping just hasn't been up to date. And we want to then contact everybody who you've confirmed has received your invoices and politely ask them when the payment's going to be due. So if it's overdue, then we want to send a polite email, message, or a phone call, again, whatever is your form of communication with that client, and just ask them. The invoice was due on the 10th of the month. Just following up when we can expect payment for that. Have a great day. Have a nice day. Keep it all very nice and friendly. We don't have to jump into your invoice is overdue. When's payment happening? We want to keep it very nice and polite, but we want to keep it consistent. Because when we are consistent, it means that this becomes part of your everyday process. And it also then means that your clients, we confirm that they've got their invoices. So we know they've got it. We then follow up if they are overdue, and we make sure that we are just polite and get that money back into your bank account. Because what I see come January, February, March is in a lot of instances, it's a combination of these steps that haven't taken place. That means that your invoices are slowly paid, and that is what causes your cash flow crunch in most instances. So what I also wanted to do, as I said, I am more than happy to have a 15-minute chat with you about your bookkeeping or about Profit First if you're interested to find more information about that. So please reach out and contact me. You can send me a private message on Messenger. You can send me an email at katie@profitfirstfortradies.com.au. I would highly suggest that you follow my Facebook page, Profit First for Tradies. And if you prefer Instagram, then you can follow me over there, where I also give a lot of hints and tips around these types of things. That is all for today's masterclass. So as I said, I just want to remind you that watching this masterclass is great, but actually doing the next step is even better. So whatever that next step looks like for you, it might be sharing this with your bookkeeper or your admin person and getting them to follow the steps. It might be booking in a chat with me for that 15 minutes so we can have an idea about what you actually need and give you some direction on those next steps. It might be sitting down and setting out an hour's time yourself to work through these steps and get these in place. Whatever it may be, and it will look different for every single person, I just really encourage you to just take the time to invest in yourself and your business so that you can avoid the cash flow crunch that could happen early next year or at any point through the year. Have a great day.